Well, welcome back again to Casamotive. And in this video, what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you my thoughts and a couple of lessons and a couple of things that I learned from Demi Lovato's Simply Complicated. I know I'm a bit late in watching this documentary, but I thought it was really interesting. Most of you will know that I've been absolutely fascinated with essentially trying to answer two questions. Number one, how does somebody become successful in life? And number two, how does somebody become successful in life without ending up divorced, without ending up killing themselves, without ending up stepping on everybody on their way to getting there, without ending up turning into a dickhead? Um, and on that path, I've had to, of course, study a lot of people from different arenas, whether it be politicians, whether it be boxers, whether it be musicians, whether it be artists, whether it be mothers, fathers, entrepreneurs, runners, whether it be bodybuilders, whether it be flower show winners. I've had to try and study as many areas as I can, in order to come up with a conclusion around these two questions. So this documentary by Demi Lovato was very, very, very interesting for me. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you a couple of thoughts on some things that she said that I thought were interesting, and maybe they might be able to add some value into your life and can hopefully help you become a higher, fuller expression of yourself. So let's go. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you, which I thought was interesting, is Demi Lovato said something which I thought was very, very interesting. She said that sometimes having a good heart isn't enough to get yourself out of a bad situation, and I think many of us, we tend to believe that perhaps just because we're a good person, or we're somebody who has been brought up in a good family, that we shouldn't have problems, that we should have everything all together, and that if we've had amazing parents, or we've been brought up by people who love us, or we've been brought up in comfort, and we've been brought up in privilege, and maybe our parents worked really hard to get us where we've got to, and we've managed to get to university or whatever it may be, that we are expected to have it all together. And if you actually think about this for a minute, that is part of the reason why I think so many of us, we struggle, because we have this expectation that we cannot live up to. I remember I was one time studying a guy. Who was it? There was a really George Best. I was studying George Best, and when I was studying George Best is one of arguably one of the greatest footballers that's ever played football. And I'm not talking about American football. I'm talking about soccer. I'm talking about English football. And that me studying him was a perfect illustration, because he was like a god in football. This man had achieved what most people would define as success, and yet he had an alcohol problem. And so what this ended up doing is it led me onto his son, and his son was it was really interesting. His son was involved in a documentary which was talking about where celebrities went into therapy about certain situations and their childhoods and their traumas, and things that they were struggling with. And his son, I think it was Callum Best, his name was talking about the fact that one of the things that he struggled a lot with was trying to live under his father's shadow. I mean, this guy grew up in privilege. He had money. He could travel anywhere around the world. He had fame. His father was glorified. He could go anywhere and basically just get him free, or get get things given to him. And yet he said that one of the biggest things that really has pained his life was the fact that he could never live up to his father's expectations. He just could not rise up to the heights of his father. And I think a lot of us in our lives, we go through a stage where we struggle, where we think, well, Cass, how the hell am I ever supposed to live up to the expectations of the people around me? Maybe the people are not just your parents, but maybe the people around you. The people around you, some of them have amazing relationships. Some of them are getting married. Some of them have amazing health. Some of them are progressing in their careers. Some of the people around you are doing incredible Ironmans and marathons. Others, are investing and they're traveling around the world. And sometimes I think it's really easy for us to think, boy, I'm never going to live up to that expectation. And you've got to remember that you want to try and stay in your own lane. Every single one of us has our own lane that we're supposed to be in. Every single one of us has our own destiny. Um, and the reason why I say this was actually highlighted to me during my training for this challenge that I have coming up next year. So many of you will know I'm involved in a challenge where I'm going to be running from the bottom of England to the top of England, and then from the bottom of Ireland to the top of Ireland. And in this quest, one of the things that I've had to do is I've had to be running like 50, 60, 70 miles at a go. And what was really interesting is many times I'll be in, let's say, my 45th mile. And by that point, clearly, I'm not running at the same speed as I was when I first started running off, right? And what would usually happen is, and I've seen this happen so many times to me, I will usually get somebody run past me and they're absolutely running really quickly. And many times I feel to myself, boy, Kasim, they're going to think you are so slow running, you're what? They're running past you and you're there. I can see them running way ahead of me. And I always have to remind myself, hold on a minute, Cass. You have just ran 40 miles. The person who's just run past you probably hasn't even run more than 5 miles. So remember, Cass, you are doing a different challenge. You're running for a completely different cause. You've been running for far much longer than they have. And they probably have no idea what you're involved in. They have no idea what you're doing. And I think it's really important that we get this and not do that thing, which is, I believe, is an English phrase, which is called keeping up with the Joneses, which I think so many of us end up doing. And I think, and I believe that part of what led Demi to this situation in her life where she felt that she had to get into drugs was the pressure of trying to maintain this perfect image, this facade, this perfect world that she believed everybody expected her to live in. And one of the things that even I had to learn in my own life is what I understand that other people may have expectations of me, but actually, am I allowing the expectations that other people have of me to override the expectations that I have of myself? Because some of us have such low expectations for ourselves that many times our expectations, other people's expectations of us, override our own. And so what ends up happening is we're living this lie. We live this life where we know that we shouldn't be kind of doing this career. We know that we shouldn't kind of be trying to look and have that bikini body, or have that body of a god. Even me, I remember I had to think about this because there was a point in my life where I was looking at a lot of my friends, and virtually most of the people, the lads that I knew, were trying to be bodybuilders. Most of them were trying to be like basically like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I thought to myself, hold on a minute. I don't really want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, I've studied Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the lifestyle and the habits that it takes to maintain that kind of a body is and that kind of way of looking and is extremely difficult. I'm somebody who likes my food, and I don't really particularly want to look like that, but everybody around me was building like that, and they were looking like that, and they were aspiring to that. And I thought, hold on a minute, Cass, is your expectation being overridden by the expectations that other people have of you? And that's something, maybe, I don't know what point you are at in your life, but I would encourage you to look at and ask yourself, are you allowing the expectations that other people have of you to override your own expectations? Are you trying to keep up with the Joneses? Because if you end up doing that, you're going to end up running a race that isn't yours. You're going to end up finding yourself in a situation where you're like, how did I get here? How did I get here? How did my life get into this situation? And I can tell you that so many people end up in this situation. I can't tell you the amount of people whose lives I've studied, and they've got to the point in their life where they're like, how the fuck did I end up here? How did my life end up like this? Like, this is not what I intended. When I first started out, when I first decided that I wanted to be successful in life, this was not what I had in mind. And I've ended up so off track. And it's like, the in order for me, I've gone so far now that in order for me to turn around is going to take me so long, and it feels impossible. It feels like I can't turn around now. I've gone this far. I have to kind of continue. And I want to encourage you to really, every now and then, stop and just examine. Look at your life and just say, hold on a minute. Am I really heading in the right direction? Is this really the path that I want? Is this the life that I expected for myself, or the one that other people expected of me? I don't know. That's something that you want to have a look at and think about for yourself. But that's the first thing that I thought about when I was watching the program. The second thing that I was thinking about is it's really is, and I think Demi highlighted this, is the importance of defining your own vision and finding out who you are. There are a number of questions which I believe are life-defining questions. There are 5 questions which I believe every human being should know the answers to. And one of those questions is a question, who am I? And this question is what I call a serious question. And what I mean by this is that in order to answer the question of who am I, you have to genuinely be somebody who's serious about your life, and there has to be a level of maturity about you in order to answer this question. This is not a small question. Because in order to answer the question, who am I, you have to go say something on these lines. I am ... You have to say I am, and then, or I am not, but it always begins with I am. And so many of us, who we are is not really been defined by us. It's been defined by the people around us. It's been defined by society. And one of the things that I learned is, if you do not consciously or deliberately choose who you are and who you want to be, your culture and your traditions and the world in which you've been brought up in will dictate who you are for you. If you live in the Western world, I think most of us can agree that essentially who you are is defined by how much money you have, how your relationship is, how your health is, and how high in terms of your career you've risen. I think it's important for us to understand that who you are is not defined by anything external of who you are. And if it is, you have a problem. Because if who you are is defined by anything which can be taken away from you, meaning it isn't innate. Innate means that you're born with it. Excuse me one second. Whoa, don't know what happened there then. We're sneezing everywhere. But what was I saying? So I was saying that the word innate means that you're born with that thing, right? So, for example, your eye color is innate. You can't, that you were born with a certain eye color. That isn't something which you could have controlled. And, hold on. My God, I'm sneezing all right, all left, right, center today, aren't I? Blimmin' hell. Right, where was I? So, I was saying, if who you are is defined by anything which is outside of who you are, the issue that you've got with this is you are always going to be controlled by that. And I think all of you can agree with me who are watching this that we live in a world where nothing is guaranteed. For example, you know, one of the things that I tried to share with people, and I had to learn myself, is who I am cannot be defined by my name. Because my name is just a name. It's a word. It's a set of letters that were made up. If who I am was, and I'll tell you how I learnt this. So I spent a lot of time studying um, Holocaust survivors. Um, and one of the things that I learned about the Holocaust is that the Jews, one of the things that they had when they went into these camps, these Nazi camps, like Auschwitz, I can't even speak today, Auschwitz. One of the things that happened is that they were given a number, and they got stripped of their name, they got stripped of any jewelry, they had their hair cut. And one of the things that was really interesting as I was studying these survivors of the Holocaust is that people would talk about that part of the reason why they survived is because they drew who they were not from what was happening around them, not from their name, but from who they were inside. Um, and I think it's really important for many of us to really define who we are, apart from how much money we have, how much jewelry we have, whether we're wearing Prada, Tommy Hilfiger, whether we're wearing Nike, because all of those are just materialistic things. All of them can be taken away. And I remember I spent a lot of time studying men who basically had committed suicide. And one of the reasons that I found for a lot of men committing suicide was because they had started essentially a company or an organization, or they had had a career, or they were involved in like basketball, or they were involved in rugby, or they were involved in being a CEO or a director of a company, and the organization which they'd set up or the job that they had basically crumbled and it all went away. And the men, because they had attached who they were with that job, with that career, what ended up happening was that basically when that diminished and collapsed, their identity, the person who they were, also collapsed. And so what I want to share with you is, if I removed your name, if I removed your age, if I removed the country that you're in, if I removed your jewelry, if I removed all the things that are materialistic around you, your car, your Prada, your Gucci, your Armani, your Armani Exchange, if I removed your Rebecca 1 million, if I removed all of the exterior things that are not innate, that you were not born with, who is left? Because I found that a lot of us don't really know the answer to that question. That question is a deep question, man. That is not something you can just kind of try to elude or trying to go around or try to like wishy-washy. That's why I call it a serious question, because it is so vitally important that we know the answer to that question. If we don't know the answer to that question, as I said earlier on, the world will define it for you. And what will end up happening is that you will end up one day becoming somebody who you don't even recognize. I can't tell you that amount of people who I've studied and I've been like, you have everything. You have the money, you have the success, you have the family, but then you hear or read in their books, their autobiographies about how I wasn't happy with the person I've become. In fact, just last night, I was studying a former vice president of Goldman Sachs. Now, if you know Goldman Sachs is the biggest bank in the world, essentially, right? This bank, if you essentially need a lot of money, okay? In order to bank with Goldman Sachs, you need to have peas, you need to have dosh, you need to have the dollar, you need to have lots of money. And I'm studying this vice president, guy who was originally brought up in South Africa, rose to the ranks, started off as a junior guy in Goldman Sachs, rose to the ranks, did amazing things. And he quit. Now, listen to me. He worked for this company for 12 years. As a vice president of Goldman Sachs, you would be taking home about £500,000 every single year. That would be your salary, and that doesn't even include bonuses and that kind of stuff. It is to become a vice president, which is actually a junior management position in Goldman Sachs, is already amazing. Okay, and so I'm listening to this guy, and they were asking him, why would you quit? You have this amazing career. You have amazing income coming in. You're working with a stable company. Why would you quit? And he said, I had all of that. I had the money. I could fly anywhere I wanted. I could have any woman I wanted, etc., etc. But he said, I didn't like the person I'd become. He said that we were involved in deals where knew what we were doing was wrong, and we knew that our client didn't know what they were doing, and yet we did them anyway. You see, if you don't know who you are and you meet a circumstance and you get into a situation like that, what does it matter? You're conscious, it doesn't matter. And so what ends up happening is all of a sudden you start eroding your integrity. You know, I read a really interesting thing about the erosion of integrity, a famous speech which was done by a president. And I remember one of the things that he was saying is the erosion of integrity begins to happen slowly. Integrity means to be one, to be whole. And so when somebody has integrity, it means that who they are and what they say and what they do are all integrated. They're all one, right? So if you say that you're somebody who believes in doing the right thing, that is all very nice, you saying that you do the right thing, but would your life prove it? Would your life prove it? If you had an amazing career, if you had a best friend and your best friend committed a crime and nobody else knew but you, would you dob them in? Would you get them? Would you tell the police about it? Because some people wouldn't. Let me put it like this: if you're married and your children committed a crime, would you let the police know? Because a lot of people wouldn't. And I know you're sat there saying, and I know, like myself, you're probably sat there thinking, well, Kasim, of course I'll tell the police if somebody committed a suicide, blah, 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 blah. Everybody says that. But the question is, would your actions prove it? I remember something which I once heard somebody say, where he said that people are rewarded in public for what they practice for years in private. Which essentially means that what you do in private really manifests itself on the outside in what people see. I'm telling you that there are some people where you just can trust them. You don't know how you can trust them, but you just know. And you just know that they're going to do the right thing. It's always interesting because I've really tried to hone in and work on this integrity thing for a long time. And one of the reasons why I've tried to hone in and work on it is because I realize that I can't really share lessons and try to teach on anything like this if I don't have that integrity, if I don't do what I say. So, for example, one of the things that I very strongly believe in is that we should do as much as we can in our lifetime to help other people. So a lot of the time people ask me, Kasim, why would you do all the running? Why would you do all the charity? Why would you do all of that kind of stuff? And I say to people, the reason why is because I have to. I have no choice, because who I am I've aligned who I am with what it is that I do. And so I can't tell you, I can't not do certain things for charity if I know I can, because it would mean that I wouldn't have that integrity that I tell people to have all the time. But you've got to remember that I have defined who I am. I know exactly who I am. I know that if you took away all of those things away from me, I know who I am. But my question to you, and it's something that I would challenge you to think about, is, do you know the answer to that question? Do you know who you are if I removed all that stuff away from you? Because a lot of people don't. A lot of people do not know the answer to that question. They think they do, but they've never really sat down and said, okay, all right then, so if I remove my car and everything else, what will be left? Because for a lot of people, that means nothing. If you remove their jewelry, you remove their Prada, you remove their aftershave, you remove their clothes, you remove their house, their car, their job, their name, a lot of people would feel empty. But how can a seed be empty? A seed cannot be empty. I think all of you can agree with me in saying that if you look at an acorn, if you look at an acorn, really it's nothing. But I think all of you can agree with me that trapped inside of an acorn is an oak tree. Meaning that what I'm trying to suggest and I'm trying to get to you is what the outside really isn't so important. It really doesn't really matter that much. But what counts is what's on the inside. And my question to you is, what is on the inside of you? If we remove all that facade, if we remove all the pretty stuff, if we remove all the fancy stuff, all the things that people admire about you, that people are like, wow, I wish I had that. If we remove all that, what is on the inside? Answering this question has to come from the inside. Because if it doesn't come from the inside, you will always end up doing things that will lead you down a path where you lose sight of who you are. That's just what I think. I don't know what you think. Comment below. The next thing that I was thinking about is to look at learning where you get your power from. This is a very complicated topic and subject to talk about, but let me try and dig into it and do my very best to get across to you. Every single one of us in life has a motivation. We have a source of motivation, I should say. We have a place either outside of us or within us that emanates and is the derivative as to why it is that we do what it is that we do. For a lot of us, that place is not pure. That place is corrupt. That place is dysfunctional. That place is based many times on revenge, on bitterness, on hate, on unworthiness, on blame, on shame, and not from a place of love, of faith, of contribution, of retribution, of redemption. That is not, for most of us, the source of our motivation. And so what I would encourage you to do in your life is I would encourage you to look, and this is just a recommendation. You do whatever you want with your life. I can't tell you what you should do. I'm just recommending stuff. I always share with you guys that be a student, not a follower. Don't just listen to what I tell you. Think for yourself. Maybe you agree with some of the things that I say. Maybe some of them you think are bullshit. Cool. That's okay. But as long as you've come up with that conclusion for yourself, that's what I want you to do. I don't want you to just agree with me for the sake of agreeing with me. I want you to say, well, Kasim, how do you know that? I want you to say, well, Kasim, I've also heard this, and based on what you're saying, that doesn't make sense. Well, it's contradictory. That's what I want you to do. I want you to be a student, not a follower. But I would encourage you to look at where your source of motivation is coming from. And to find where your power base is. Where do you feel strong? When I was watching this Demi Lovato program, one of the things that was really interesting is she found her strength in buying her own place, by buying her own home. And she was able to make and structure and craft that home of hers into what she wanted. Not what other people wanted for her to do it, but the way that she wanted it. And I think that it's really important for all of us to find that place in our lives where we have that sense of control, that sense of power. because so many of us are submissive and are a victim to our source of motivation. In other words, we are overwhelmed by that revenge. We're overwhelmed by the anger, by the shame, which we are basing our actions and our vision on. Um, and I would just encourage you, and you, as I say, this is your choice, but I would encourage you to look at your life and just look, where do you have power? Where do you feel strong? One of the ways that I found to feel strong in life is to find out in your life where it is that you are really have an area of your life where you're good at something. Finding an area of excellence. What are you good at? And then operate within that area. There are some people who are really, really, really good at writing, but spend 98% of their day operating in every other area but writing. If you are somebody who's into fitness and you literally radiate power and strength and vigor, right? A spirit within you is awakened when you're within the area of sports, of teaching it or talking about it or researching it. Guess what? Spend most of your time. By most, I mean more than 51%. So if you're looking at your day and if 51% or more of your day is not operating from that space, from that source, then I can tell you, you're always going to be a victim. You are never going to be a winner. You're never going to be somebody in your life who is actually getting out there and is winning. You'd have to excuse me, by the way, because I've got a bit of a cold. Most of you know I'm training at the moment, and so it means waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and running. So I've got a bit of a cold at the moment, but I really wanted to share this with you because I think it's really important. And so that's what I wanted to share with you, essentially. Find that source for you. Find that place in your life where you have strength, where you have power, where you are operating from an area where there is a strength about you, there is a vigor, there is an energy where people know you for your excellence in this area. In fact, many of you know, as earlier on I said to you, there are 5 questions that I believe are really important for every one of us to know the answers to. And I call them serious questions. They're big life questions. And earlier on, as I said to you, one of those questions is, who am I? The other question of those questions is, what can I do? A question of what can I do answers the question of, what are you good at? What are you not good at? Understanding what you are good at and what you're not good at is so important. I cannot over exaggerate its importance. Because if you look at most people in their lives, I can tell you, I spend most of my day studying people, and the average human being operates from a deficiency. We operate in areas that are not of our strength. And so what I would encourage you to do is find the area in which you have power. Find the area in your life where you have some sense of control. Where you're like, do you know what? This is my area. Cass, I may not be good at singing. I may not be good at boxing. I may not be good at writing. I may not be good at public speaking. I may not be good at cooking, but I'll fucking tell you what, Cass, when it comes to anything to do with plants, when it comes to anything to do with growing, understanding how the plants work and how they grow and the fertilization process and the best time to plant plants, that is my area, Cass. If you want to speak to me, if you want to know about anything to do with plants, come to me, Cass. Come to me and I will answer that question for you. I believe that when you find that for yourself, but also integrate that with a source which is positive, which is got an edging towards and a leaning towards a lie, my God, you can do remarkable things. My God, you could influence and lead other people. And that's just what I would recommend to you. I mean, as I say, it's your life. You do whatever you want. But those are just my thoughts that I wanted to share with you. What do you think, though? I'm always keen to hear from you guys. So comment below, send me a message. What do you think? Maybe you are somebody who disagrees with me. I don't know. Comment below. I want to know. I'm always keen to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.